What would you do if you discovered that the strange symbols found in the snow near your home were not the work of local pranksters, but evidence of something far more sinister that has haunted your town for over a century? Something that explains why people vanish without a trace during the harshest winter months, their disappearances carefully scrubbed from official records. In the bitter January of 1901, when the snow piled 6 feet high against the weathered clapboard houses of Hallowell, Maine, local constable William Merritt received a report that would mark the beginning of one of New England's most disturbing, unsolved mysteries. Thomas Blackwood, a respected lumber merchant whose family had helped establish the town in the late 1700s, had failed to return home after what should have been a routine inspection of his northern timber holdings. The initial search party, consisting of 7 men from prominent Hallowell families, departed at dawn on January 12th. They followed Blackwood's known route toward his property that bordered the vast uninhabited forests stretching toward the Canadian border. What they discovered would forever alter the quiet community's understanding of the wilderness that surrounded them. "We found his sleigh first, half buried in fresh snow, about 8 miles north of town," wrote Frederick Hammond, the search party's leader, in his official statement to authorities. "The horse was gone, presumably broken free and wandered off. Blackwood's belongings remained undisturbed, his rifle still in its case, his provisions untouched. But of Thomas himself there was no sign save for his tracks leading away from the sleigh. And surrounding those tracks, etched in perfect precision in the snow, were symbols unlike anything I had ever seen before. Concentric circles, strange angular figures that reminded me of ancient runes, though none I recognized from my studies. They seemed to form a path that Thomas had followed, heading deeper into the forest. We traced this path for nearly a mile before the symbols in his tracks simply ended. As though the man had been plucked from the earth, the disappearance might have been attributed to the dangers of winter travel. Perhaps Blackwood had become disoriented in a sudden squall and wandered off to his death, if not for the discovery made by Hammond's group as they continued their search. Approximately 2 miles beyond where Blackwood's tracks ended, the men came upon a clearing that had been meticulously swept of snow. In the center of this 30-foot diameter circle, the same cryptic symbols had been carved into the frozen ground. Kennebec County Sheriff James Palmer arrived the following day with additional men. His official report, filed on January 15th, 1901, contained observations that local officials would later attempt to strike from public record. The symbols appear to have been burned rather than carved into the earth. Though the ground showed no evidence of conventional fire, the patterns radiate outward from a central point and bear no resemblance to any known language or tribal markings familiar to this office. Dr. Harrison Ellis, who accompanied our party as medical examiner, identified what appeared to be blood frozen into the grooves of these markings, though in a quantity insufficient to suggest fatal injury. Most disturbing was the discovery of Blackwood's pocket watch at the center of the arrangement, its hands frozen at precisely 3:17, though whether this indicates AM or PM remains unclear. The glass of the timepiece was shattered, and the internal mechanisms appear to have been subjected to extreme cold, beyond what even our current weather conditions could produce. The case took an even more unsettling turn when Palmer's deputies began interviewing residents of the outlying farms and homesteads. 3 separate witnesses reported seeing unusual lights in the sky on the evening of Blackwood's disappearance, described variously as ghostly green illuminations. Dancing flames with no apparent source, and most specifically by elderly resident Martha Winters, as ribbons of light that moved with purpose, like fingers reaching down from heaven. Only I doubt they came from any place holy. The Hallowell Telegraph published a brief article on January 17th, mentioning only that Blackwood was missing and that search efforts continued. No mention was made of the symbols or the cleared ground. When questioned about this omission years later, Former Telegraph editor Wilson Pierce claimed the decision came after a visit from both Sheriff Palmer and Mayor Henry Crawford, who expressed concerns about undue public alarm and the potential impact on the town's reputation and lumber trade. While the official search for Blackwood was called off after 2 weeks, citing hazardous winter conditions, a small group of men, including Frederick Hammond and Thomas Blackwood's younger brother James, continued their own investigation. From James Blackwood's personal journal, dated February 3rd, 1901, Fred and I spoke with Professor Thaddeus Watkins at Bowdoin College today regarding the symbols. The old man became visibly disturbed upon viewing our crude sketches. He directed us to several obscure texts dealing with ancient Norse settlements in North America, suggesting similarities between our symbols and certain runic patterns associated with Norse winter rituals. But there was something he wasn't telling us. When pressed, he admitted to having seen similar markings once before, in documents relating to the disappearance of 17 people from a logging settlement near this same region in 1853. That incident had been officially attributed to a typhoid outbreak, but Watkins suggested the disease explanation was fabricated after the fact. He promised to locate the original documents for our review, but when we returned to his office the following day, we were informed by the department secretary that Professor Watkins had taken an unexpected leave of absence and would not return until spring. The investigation might have ended there, lost to history like so many other frontier mysteries, if not for the events that followed in the subsequent weeks. Between January 20th and February 25th, 1901, 4 more Hallowell residents disappeared under similar circumstances. Each vanished during heavy snowfall. Each had reported seeing strange lights in the days preceding their disappearance, and in 2 cases, the same mysterious symbols were found near their last known locations. The final disappearance of that winter was perhaps the most disturbing. On February 25th, Sheriff James Palmer himself failed to return from what he described to his deputy as a routine patrol of the northern forest edge. The search party found his horse and sled abandoned, with a pattern of the now familiar symbols extending in a spiral around the site. Palmer's service revolver was found with all 6 chambers emptied, the bullets apparently fired in a circular pattern. Of the sheriff himself, no trace was ever found. As spring arrived and the snow melted, revealing no bodies or additional clues, town officials moved swiftly to contain what they increasingly viewed as a threat to Hallowell's stability and economic future. Mayor Crawford convened a special closed session of the town council on April 8th, with minutes that remained sealed in county archives until 1978. The partially redacted transcript reveals the depth of the cover-up that would shape Hallowell's history for decades to come. Crawford: Gentlemen, we must address this situation decisively. 6 prominent citizens have vanished without explanation. Public confidence is shaken. The lumber concerns from Boston are threatening to withdraw their contracts. Councilman Reed: What exactly do you propose, Henry? We cannot simply pretend these men didn't exist. Crawford: Not pretend, Richard. Reimagine. Thomas Blackwood has accepted a lucrative opportunity with timber interests in Washington state. Sheriff Palmer has taken a position with the federal marshals in the Dakota Territory. The others have similarly received opportunities elsewhere, opportunities too sudden and advantageous to decline. Reed: And who will believe these convenient departures? Crawford: They will believe what we tell them, supported by correspondence that will arrive from these men in the coming months. Correspondence that several of us will need to create with great attention to detail. Their families will be generously compensated from the town's emergency fund, with the understanding that this narrative is maintained. Councilman Prescott: And what of the symbols? The strange lights? Palmer's discharged weapon? Crawford: There were no symbols, Charles, no lights. Palmer's weapon was stolen by whoever or whatever took him, and no bullets were recovered. The less said about these details, the better. Dr. Ellis has agreed to amend his reports accordingly. What followed was perhaps one of the most successful suppressions of unexplained phenomena in New England history. Within 6 months, the official record had been thoroughly sanitized. Blackwood and the others were recorded as having relocated voluntarily. The new sheriff, Crawford's brother-in-law, Everett Porter, ensured that all physical evidence from the investigations was destroyed. The families of the missing, whether through compensation, coercion, or genuine fear, maintained the established narrative. For nearly 5 decades, the truth of the 1901 disappearances remained buried, mentioned only in hushed conversations among the town's oldest residents. The story might have been lost entirely, if not for the harsh winter of 1949, when history began to repeat itself in ways that could no longer be so easily concealed. On the night of December 18, 1949, 10-year-old Timothy Collins was playing in the fresh snow behind his family's home on the northern edge of what had by then become the city of Hallowell. His mother, Eleanor Collins, recalled the events in a sworn statement to state authorities. Timothy had been out for about 20 minutes when I heard him calling for me. There was something wrong in his voice, not fear exactly, but excitement mixed with confusion. When I reached the back porch, I saw him standing about 50 feet from the house, pointing at something in the snow. Even from that distance, I could see strange patterns all around him, perfect geometric shapes that couldn't possibly have been made by a child's play. Before I could call him back to the house, the sky changed. I don't know how else to describe it. A greenish light seemed to flow like water across the clouds. Timothy looked up and I screamed for him to run to me. He took 2 steps and then, Mrs. Collins's statement continues after a noted pause, he was simply gone, between one footstep and the next. The light faded immediately after. When my husband returned with neighbors and flashlights, they found those symbols burned into the snow around where Timothy had been standing, and at the center where my son had stood. The snow had melted completely, exposing bare, scorched earth beneath. The Collins disappearance proved impossible to conceal in the way the 1901 incidents had been. For one, the event had been witnessed directly by Mrs. Collins. For another, post-war America had developed a fascination with unexplained phenomena, particularly those that might be attributed to extraterrestrial origins. News of the incident reached beyond local papers, drawing attention from investigators in Boston and even personnel from nearby military installations. Among those drawn to Hallowell was historian and folklorist Dr. Margaret Winters, granddaughter of Martha Winters, who had witnessed the strange lights in 1901. Unlike many who came to investigate, Dr. Winters arrived with knowledge of the town's hidden history, pieced together from her grandmother's journals and years of methodical research. Her presence and persistent questions made town officials nervous, particularly those older families still aware of the earlier cover-up. From Dr. Winters' research journal, dated January 4th, 1950, today I gained access to the basement archives of the old town hall, ostensibly to research Hallowell's lumber industry for my academic work. The current clerk, unfamiliar with the significance of what he guards, left me unattended for nearly 3 hours. Among the water-damaged tax records and mundane correspondence, I discovered a small locked metal box, labeled simply JP 1901. The lock proved no match for my hairpin. Inside were items that confirmed everything my grandmother had told me. Sheriff James Palmer's original field notes, unaltered by the subsequent sanitization. Several daguerreotypes showing the symbol patterns in the snow. A small glass vial containing soil samples from the cleared circle, with Palmer's notation, "Earth unnaturally desiccated, as though all moisture extracted." Lab in Augusta finds no explanation. Most significantly, I found a folded piece of parchment unlike any modern paper, covered in the same symbols found at the disappearance sites, but rendered in what appears to be a dark, iridescent ink that seems to shift color when viewed from different angles. Palmer's notes indicate this was discovered in Blackwood's coat pocket, which was found 3 days after his disappearance, nearly a mile from where his sleigh had been abandoned. At the bottom of the box was a letter from Palmer to his wife, never sent, dated the morning of his own disappearance. In it, he confesses to having deciphered a portion of the symbols with help from a specialist in ancient languages from Miskatonic University. Palmer believed the symbols formed a message or invitation, and he intended to test his theory by creating a response pattern. His final written words chill me. "If I am correct, Mary, we have been visited by something not of this earth, something that has been watching us for centuries, perhaps millennia, something that has been taking people for a purpose I dare not speculate upon. I must know if I am right. If I do not return, burn this letter and leave Hallowell. Take nothing with you." Dr. Winter's discovery sparked a more thorough investigation than Hallowell's authorities could suppress. When Timothy Collins' disappearance was followed by 3 more in January 1950, all children, all vanishing after reporting strange patterns in the snow, state authorities and eventually federal investigators descended on the town. The official investigation yielded few definitive answers, but succeeded in uncovering the extensive cover-up of the 1901 incidents. Several elderly members of Hallowell's founding families, including former Mayor Crawford's son William, were indicted for obstruction of justice and falsifying public records, though most were ultimately deemed too infirm to stand trial. The investigation took an unexpected turn when researchers began examining historical records of the region predating Hallowell's formal establishment. Colonial documents from the mid-1700s described the area as forsaken ground that local Penobscot tribes refused to enter during winter months. A French missionary's journal from 1732 referenced pagan symbols appearing in the snow and the disappearance of 3 trappers who had ventured into the forest during a particularly harsh January storm. Even more revealing was a partial journal recovered from a Norwegian explorer, believed to date from the early 11th century, discovered during archaeological excavations near the coast in 1947. Though most of the text remained untranslated, experts identified several drawn symbols identical to those found in the Hallowell disappearance cases. Next to these drawings were what linguists believed to be ancient Norse words, meaning those who harvest from above, or possibly the winter collectors. As the investigation broadened, patterns emerged suggesting similar incidents throughout northern New England, the Canadian Maritimes and Iceland, all sharing key elements: winter occurrences, geometric symbols, unusual atmospheric phenomena, and victims who vanished without physical evidence of harm. Most had been successfully obscured by local authorities or attributed to more conventional explanations like exposure, animal attacks, or emigration. By spring of 1950, the disappearances in Hallowell ceased just as they had in 1901. The investigation continued for several more months before budget constraints and the outbreak of the Korean War diverted federal resources elsewhere. The final official report, heavily classified until 1978, concluded, while evidence suggests a pattern of unexplained disappearances connected to unusual environmental phenomena, no definitive explanation can be provided at this time. Natural causes such as electromagnetic anomalies, mass hallucination, or undocumented meteorological events cannot be ruled out. In the absence of bodies or conclusive physical evidence, more exotic theories remain speculative at best. Recommend ongoing monitoring of the region during winter months and immediate notification of federal authorities should similar incidents recur. What the report failed to mention was that much of the physical evidence collected, including soil samples, photographic plates, and most significantly, the parchment found in Blackwood's coat, had been transferred to military custody and subsequently disappeared into classified research programs. Dr. Winters, whose testimony and research had been instrumental in exposing the historical pattern, found herself increasingly isolated professionally, her academic funding revoked, Her findings dismissed as sensationalism by colleagues. From her final journal entry, dated October 30th, 1952, "I'm leaving Hallowell tomorrow, perhaps for good. 3 years of research, all my professional credibility, sacrificed to a truth no one wants to acknowledge. The military has taken everything of value. Palmer's notes, the soil samples, the parchment, all disappeared into some government vault. The symbols haunt my dreams now. Last night I woke to find frost patterns on my bedroom window that seemed to form the same concentric circles we found at the Collins site. Coincidence, surely, or my mind finding patterns where none exist. I've sent copies of my complete research to trusted colleagues at universities in England, France, and Argentina. If anything should happen to me, if I should relocate suddenly, as so many Hallowell residents have over the years, perhaps someone will continue where I left off. The winter is coming again, and with it, I fear, they will return. Whatever they are, whatever they want from us." Dr. Winters did leave Hallowell the following day. Her car was found abandoned on a rural road in Vermont 3 days later, with no sign of struggle or foul play. The driver's side window was described as being covered in unusual frost patterns, despite the relatively mild weather. She was officially listed as a missing person and later declared legally dead in 1959. Her research materials, both those in her possession and the copies sent abroad, were never located. For 27 years following Dr. Winters' disappearance, Hallowell experienced no further incidents matching the established pattern. Some attributed this to increased military presence in the region. Others to changes in logging practices that reduced human activity in the northern forests during winter months. A few suggested more esoteric explanations that whatever had been taking people had either satisfied its purpose or been deterred by modern technology and increased surveillance. Then came the winter of 1979, and with it a new chapter in the mystery that would finally bring the Hallowell incidents into public consciousness in ways that could no longer be contained or denied. Michael Prescott, great-grandson of Councilman Charles Prescott, who had participated in the original 1901 cover-up, had returned to his ancestral hometown after completing doctoral studies in astrophysics at MIT. His primary research focus was atmospheric anomalies, specifically aurora-like phenomena reported at latitudes significantly south of typical aurora borealis activity. Prescott established a small research station in the forests north of Hallowell, equipped with then state-of-the-art monitoring equipment, including spectrographic analyzers, electromagnetic field detectors, and early digital imaging systems. His presence was viewed with suspicion by older residents who recognized his family name and its connection to the town's dark history. But the general population, now largely composed of people who had moved to the area after World War II, regarded him merely as an eccentric academic. What Prescott discovered would simultaneously validate decades of suppressed reports and open entirely new questions about the nature of the Hallowell phenomena. From his research logs, dated December 12, 1979, the equipment detected it before I saw anything visually, a sudden spike in electromagnetic activity around 2 a.m., followed by radiation signatures in spectral ranges I've never encountered in any natural phenomenon. When I stepped outside the research station, the sky above the forest was alive is the only word for it. Ribbons of light, primarily in the green spectrum, but shifting occasionally to deep purple and a blue so intense it hurt to look at directly. The movement wasn't random like normal aurora activity. There was distinct patterning, almost like a language written in light. Most remarkable was the effect on the local environment. The air temperature directly beneath these light formations dropped nearly 40 degrees in minutes, creating instant condensation that fell as snow in perfect circular patterns. Within these snow circles, the same symbols described in the historical cases began to form, not created by any visible force, but seemingly emerging from within the snow itself. as though the crystals were realigning at a molecular level. I managed to capture nearly 18 minutes of continuous data before my equipment failed, not due to malfunction, but to extreme cold that froze the lubricants in moving parts and caused battery failure. Before retreating inside, I collected snow samples from both within and outside the symbol patterns. Initial analysis shows the snow within the symbols has a crystalline structure unlike anything I've encountered in terrestrial precipitation. Prescott continued his observations throughout that winter, documenting 14 distinct manifestations of what he termed structured atmospheric light phenomena, or SALP. In 7 of these incidents, he recorded the formation of snow symbols, though none were associated with human disappearances. His research suggested the phenomena followed a lunar cycle, occurring most intensely during the new moon when natural light was at its minimum. In February 1980, Prescott submitted his preliminary findings to several scientific journals. All rejected his work, citing methodological concerns and his failure to provide peer-reviewable evidence beyond his own observations and data recordings. Frustrated but undeterred, Prescott expanded his monitoring equipment and prepared for more rigorous documentation during the following winter. He never got the chance. On December 3, 1980, during the first significant snowfall of the season, Prescott's research station lost power. The backup generator failed to engage. When station maintenance personnel arrived the following morning, they found the building intact but unoccupied. Prescott's final log entry, timed at 11:47 p.m., described unusual electromagnetic readings and his intention to check the exterior sensors. Outside the research station, maintenance workers discovered the now familiar symbols carved into the fresh snow in a spiral pattern extending nearly 100 yards from the building's entrance. At the center of this spiral, where the snow had melted to expose bare ground, they found Prescott's digital recorder. When later analyzed, the device contained 18 seconds of audio, wind noise, a sharp intake of breath, and finally Prescott's voice saying clearly, "They're here. I can see them now. They're not what we thought. They're..." before cutting to static. The Prescott disappearance marked a turning point in the Hallowell mystery. Unlike previous incidents, this one involved a scientist with credible academic credentials, whose research, rejected though it had been, provided documentation that could not be easily dismissed. More significantly, Prescott had taken precautions against his own disappearance, arranging for all his research materials to be automatically transferred to colleagues and select media outlets should he fail to enter a confirmation code into his computer system for 3 consecutive days. By January 1981, the story had been featured in several major newspapers and scientific publications. The term Hallowell phenomenon entered the public lexicon, drawing researchers, paranormal investigators, and curiosity seekers to the small Maine town. Local authorities, no longer composed of the original families involved in the cover-up, cooperated with investigations to varying degrees, though federal agencies, particularly military and intelligence branches, moved quickly to secure Prescott's equipment and original data records. Dr. Eleanor Blackwood, a distant relative of the original Thomas Blackwood and professor of anthropology specializing in folklore surrounding celestial phenomena, arrived in Hallowell in early 1981 to conduct what would become the most comprehensive civilian investigation of the incidents to date. Unlike previous researchers, Dr. Blackwood approached the phenomena from a cross-cultural perspective, identifying similar patterns in indigenous accounts from circumpolar regions around the world. From her published paper, Celestial Harvesters, a cross-cultural analysis of winter disappearance mythologies, Journal of Anthropological Anomalies, Vol 1982, what emerges from comparative analysis is a remarkably consistent narrative spanning cultures with no historical contact. From the Sami people of northern Scandinavia to the Inuit of Arctic Canada, From Siberian tribes to the indigenous peoples of Alaska, we find recurring motifs, beings who descend from the sky during the darkest winter months. Symbols appearing in snow or ice that serve as either warning or invitation. Individuals who vanish without trace after witnessing lights in the sky. These narratives consistently describe the entities not as malevolent, but as collectors or harvesters, gathering something from our world or from humans themselves. The Sami speak of those who harvest dreams, while Alaskan traditions refer to the takers of breath. A particularly detailed account from an 18th century Siberian shaman describes entities that collect the shadows that humans cast upon the snow. For these contain fragments of soul that renew some ancient world above the stars. Most significant is that across these disparate cultures, the symbols associated with these entities are strikingly similar to those documented in the Hallowell cases. The concentric circles, angular runes, and spiral patterns appear with minimal variation in rock art, textiles, and ceremonial objects from cultures separated by thousands of miles and hundreds of years, suggesting either cultural diffusion of extraordinary reach or, more provocatively, a shared experience of the same phenomenon. Dr. Blackwood's research revealed another disturbing pattern. The frequency and geographic spread of incidents appeared to be increasing. Historical records suggested occurrences roughly every 50 years until the early 20th century, when the cycle shortened to approximately 30 years. By the 1980s, similar incidents were being reported in northern regions across the globe with increasing frequency. Though few received the attention directed at Hallowell due to its established historical pattern. The winter of 1981 brought no disappearances in Hallowell itself, likely due to the unprecedented number of observers, journalists, and investigators present. However, Dr. Blackwood documented the now familiar light phenomena and snow symbols on multiple occasions, obtaining the first color photographs and film footage of the events. Her electromagnetic monitoring equipment, more advanced than what Prescott had available, recorded distinct patterns that defied conventional explanation. Perhaps most significantly, Blackwood succeeded where others had failed in translating portions of the symbol patterns. Working with linguists, cryptographers, and experts in ancient writing systems, she identified structural elements consistent with a functional language rather than purely decorative patterns. By the spring of 1982, her team had developed a partial lexicon, suggesting the symbols communicated concepts relating to time cycles, celestial positions, and what appeared to be biological or organic processes. From Dr. Blackwood's field journal, April 10, 1982, the translation has revealed something unexpected. These aren't just symbols of communication. They're operational instructions, a form of technology rendered in a medium we barely understand. The patterns don't just represent concepts. They appear to physically alter the environment around them. The snow isn't merely a canvas. It's a component in some larger process. We've documented temperature anomalies, electromagnetic fluctuations, and in 2 instances, measurable gravitational irregularities within the symbol formations. Whatever these entities are, they've developed a method of affecting our physical world through patterned information. The implications are staggering. The breakthrough in understanding the symbols led to an unexpected collaboration between Dr. Blackwood and Dr. James Werner, a physicist from MIT who had been conducting his own investigation into the Hallowell phenomena. Werner's specialty was quantum field theory, particularly the theoretical concept of localized space-time distortions. His interest in the Hallowell case stemmed from electromagnetic readings taken by a weather monitoring station near Prescott's research facility on the night of his disappearance. From Dr. Werner's research notes, dated May 15, 1982, the patterns identified by Blackwood's team correspond to mathematical expressions describing what we might call dimensional folding, theoretical points where our 3-dimensional space could connect with higher dimensional structures. The configurations in the snow aren't just symbols. They're precision instruments creating localized fields where conventional physics temporarily breaks down. If I'm interpreting this correctly, these entities aren't traveling vast distances to reach us. They're simply stepping through from somewhere that exists alongside our reality, but normally remains inaccessible. Throughout the summer and fall of 1982, Blackwood and Werner prepared for the winter observation season, establishing a heavily instrumented research station approximately 2 miles from Prescott's original site. Their team included linguists, physicists, meteorologists, and 2 representatives from a discrete government agency whose exact affiliation remained deliberately vague. The winter of 1982 proved unusually mild, with minimal snowfall until late January. When the phenomena finally manifested on the night of January 23rd, it was with an intensity that exceeded all previous recorded instances. From the combined observational log of Blackwood and Werner, 17 hours, first electromagnetic anomalies detected, all equipment functioning normally. 23:05, visual confirmation of auroral activity, initially concentrated directly overhead before extending in a southerly direction. Spectral analysis shows frequencies outside normal parameters for terrestrial aurora. 23:17, first symbol patterns forming in snow approximately 400 yards north of observation station. Temperature within pattern boundaries dropping rapidly, exceeding the measuring capacity of our equipment, below -70 degrees Celsius. 23:22, symbols now cover approximately 2 acres, arranged in concentric patterns with a central clearing approximately 30 feet in diameter. The ground in this clearing is completely exposed, with no trace of snow despite the 8-inch accumulation surrounding it. 23:30, light phenomena intensifying. Structure becoming more defined, distinct columns or pathways of light now visible, connecting the symbol field to a point approximately 500 feet above ground level. No solid objects visible within the light formations. 23:45, all electronic equipment failing intermittently, maintaining observation through optical instruments only. The central clearing is now exhibiting what appears to be a distortion effect, similar to heat mirage, but in sub-zero temperatures. 23:52, movement detected within the central clearing. Difficult to describe precisely. The space itself seems to be opening, though not in any conventional sense. The closest analogy might be a fabric being stretched to the point of transparency. Through this thinned space, structures are becoming visible that do not correspond to anything in our normal visual field. 0015, the opening has stabilized. What lies beyond defies simple description. It appears to be a space of greater than 3 dimensions, rendered partially comprehensible to our perception. Within this space, entities are clearly visible, though their morphology shifts as they move, suggesting our perception captures only cross-sections of higher dimensional beings as they intersect with our reality. 0023. The entities are extracting something from the exposed ground in the clearing, an energy or substance invisible to normal perception, but registering on our specialized equipment as quantum-level disturbances in ambient field measurements. Whatever they're collecting appears to be naturally occurring, but concentrated by the symbol patterns surrounding the clearing. 0040, the opening is contracting. The entities have withdrawn, light phenomena fading, symbol patterns remaining in snow, though the extreme temperature effects are normalizing. 0110, sight returned to apparently normal conditions, save for the physical symbol patterns and the cleared central area. Temperature readings consistent with ambient environment. Electromagnetic readings returning to baseline. No evidence of conventional intrusion or physical manipulation of the site. The observations of January 23rd provided the first comprehensive documentation of what researchers now termed a full manifestation cycle of the Hallowell phenomenon. Subsequent analysis of the collected data revealed several critical insights. First, the phenomenon appeared to be extraction-focused rather than exploration or communication-oriented. The entities, whatever their nature, came with specific purpose to collect something present at these locations. Second, the symbols served as both targeting mechanism and process facilitator, creating the precise conditions necessary for the extraction to occur. Third, and perhaps most significantly, the process showed evidence of technological refinement over time. Comparison with historical accounts suggested that earlier manifestations had been less efficient, requiring direct interaction with human subjects. Modern manifestations appeared to have eliminated this requirement by improving the symbol technology to extract whatever was needed directly from the environment. This last insight led to a disturbing hypothesis. The historical disappearances of humans might represent an earlier, less refined collection method. Whatever the entities, salt might exist in both the soil at specific locations and within human beings themselves. Dr. Werner proposed a controversial theory in a paper published in the classified Journal of Non-Conventional Physics in June 1983. The entities appear to be harvesting quantum-level information encoded in specific arrangements of matter. This information exists both in certain geological formations and, significantly, in the neural structures of human beings. The evolution of their collection methodology suggests they've discovered that the information can be extracted from soil with greater efficiency than from humans, who present additional complications including resistance, mobility, and potential for raising alarm. The shift away from human collection represents technological progress rather than any ethical consideration. Werner's theory gained support when analysis of soil samples from the central clearing revealed unusual crystalline structures at the microscopic level, structures that bore remarkable similarity to patterns found in human neural tissue. These structures appeared depleted or altered after a manifestation event, as though something fundamental had been extracted from them. The winter of 1983 brought 5 more manifestation events, all extensively documented by the research team. No human disappearances occurred, though this was likely due to strict security measures preventing civilian access to areas where the phenomena appeared most active. The accumulated data allowed researchers to identify a definitive pattern in manifestation locations, sites along geological formations containing specific mineral compositions, particularly those rich in rare earth elements. By 1984, the research team had developed predictive models that could anticipate with reasonable accuracy where and when manifestations would occur. This led to the most ambitious and ultimately tragic phase of the investigation: attempted communication. Dr. Blackwood, having made significant progress in translating the symbol language, proposed creating a modified version of the patterns that might establish contact without triggering a full manifestation. From her proposal to the Research Oversight Committee, dated September 12, 1984, we now understand enough of the structural linguistics to compose our own messages using their symbolic system. We propose creating a pattern that communicates our awareness of their presence and our desire for exchange of information rather than one-way extraction. The pattern will be designed to initiate contact but modify the parameters of the interaction field, potentially allowing communication without full dimensional rupture. Despite objections from several committee members, including Dr. Werner, the communication attempt was approved for the coming winter. Throughout November, the team meticulously created their modified symbol pattern in a clearing 5 miles north of Hallowell, using precisely measured lines of a specially formulated compound containing the same mineral elements found at natural manifestation sites. On December 7, 1984, under ideal conditions of a new moon and fresh snowfall, the team activated their communication array by introducing a controlled electromagnetic field to the symbol pattern. What followed was documented in the final transmission from the research station, a radio message sent by Dr. Blackwood at 11:53 p.m. The response was immediate, too immediate. They were waiting. The symbols are activating, but not according to our design. Something is overriding our patterns, restructuring them even as we watch. The opening is forming, but much larger than anything previously documented. Werner was right. We've invited something we don't understand. The dimensional barrier is thinning across a much wider area than our instruments can measure. They're coming through, but not just at our site. We're detecting multiple rupture points forming across a 20-mile radius. Whatever we've done, we've changed the pattern. This isn't collection anymore. The transmission ended abruptly. When military personnel reached the research station the following morning, they found the facility intact but empty. All 17 team members had vanished. The symbol pattern had expanded to cover nearly 50 acres, with multiple central clearings rather than a single collection point. Aerial surveys revealed similar patterns had formed simultaneously at 7 other locations throughout the region. For 3 consecutive nights, manifestation events continued across northern Maine, each more intense than any previously recorded. On December 10th, the phenomena abruptly ceased. Analysis of affected areas showed unprecedented levels of extraction. Soil samples were completely depleted of the crystalline structures previously identified as collection targets. The events of December 1984 resulted in the immediate classification of all Hallowell research under the highest levels of government security. Official explanations cited a localized meteorological disturbance and chemical exposure as the cause of the research team's disappearance. The affected areas were quarantined under the pretext of environmental contamination. For nearly 2 decades, no further manifestations were documented in the Hallowell region. Many researchers involved in the peripheral aspects of the investigation concluded that whatever the entities had been seeking had been fully harvested, leaving nothing to draw them back to the area. This theory was disproven in January of 2001, exactly 100 years after the original Blackwood disappearance, when a new series of manifestations began. These events exhibited several disturbing evolutions from the previously documented pattern. First, the symbols now formed independently without preceding snowfall, appearing suddenly on any available surface, including frozen lakes, roads, and even the sides of buildings. Second, the manifestations no longer appeared limited to the new moon phase, occurring at seemingly random intervals throughout the winter months. Third, and most alarmingly, human disappearances resumed, but with a distinct pattern, individuals who had some familial connection to previous victims, suggesting a genetic component to whatever the entities were now harvesting. From the classified testimony of Dr. Samuel Winters, great-nephew of Dr. Margaret Winters and consultant to the government task force established to monitor the phenomena, dated February 12, 2001, what we're witnessing is not a resumption of the previous collection pattern, but an evolution of it. The entities appear to have developed a method for remotely identifying specific genetic markers across the human population. The symbols are no longer territorial markers, but individual targeting mechanisms, appearing in proximity to specific people rather than geological formations. Whatever they learned from our attempted communication in 1984, it dramatically accelerated their technological approach. The winter of 2001 saw 23 documented disappearances across New England, each preceded by the appearance of symbol patterns near the victim's residence. Government agencies maintained a strict information blackout, attributing the disappearances to conventional explanations ranging from accidents to voluntary departures. By 2003, the phenomena had spread globally, with similar disappearances and symbol manifestations reported in northern regions across Europe, Asia, and North America. The pattern of selecting victims with genetic connections to historical cases continued. suggesting a systematic harvesting of specific genetic lineages. Dr. Winter's final report to the Oversight Committee, dated March 28, 2005, just days before his own disappearance, contained a hypothesis that remains the most comprehensive, if unsettling, explanation of the Hallowell phenomenon. These entities exist in dimensions adjacent to but distinct from our own. Their interest in our realm appears to focus on specific information patterns encoded in both geological formations and biological structures, particularly human neural and genetic material. The symbols represent a technology that allows precision extraction of this information without necessitating full physical manifestation in our dimension. Historical evidence suggests this harvesting has occurred cyclically for centuries, possibly millennia, with the entities periodically returning to collect new information that has developed or evolved since their previous visit. The acceleration in both frequency and sophistication of collection suggests they have found something of particular value in recent human development, possibly related to our increasing complexity of thought, technological advancement, or specific genetic adaptations. Most concerning is the evidence that our attempted communication in 1984 fundamentally altered their perception of us. Prior to that event, humans appeared to be simply one of many collection sources. After our demonstration of awareness and attempted engagement, their collection methodology shifted to specifically target human subjects with particular genetic profiles. We inadvertently revealed ourselves not merely as resources, but as potential rivals or threats in whatever process this information serves in their realm. The acceleration of their technological approach, the expansion of their collection territory, and the increasing precision of their targeting all suggest an escalation of purpose. They are no longer simply harvesting. They are systematically extracting specific information lineages from our population, possibly to prevent some development they perceive as threatening. In essence, we are experiencing a methodical, targeted extraction of specific human potential, not merely taking people, but taking particular futures that those genetic and neural patterns might have created. Winter's report was suppressed immediately upon receipt. 3 days later, symbol patterns appeared in the snow surrounding his remote cabin in western Maine. By morning, he had joined the growing list of those taken by what he had spent his life trying to understand. In the years since Winter's disappearance, a loose network of researchers, many related to historical victims, has continued to document the phenomena despite official denial and active suppression of information. Their findings suggest the manifestations continue to evolve in complexity and purpose, with the entities demonstrating increasing ability to manipulate our physical environment beyond the immediate vicinity of their collection activities.